Yeah. Yeah, we've been texting back and forth, and just trying to keep him engaged that way. And we've had some good back and forth conversations. Of course, Michael was here a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I think Jordan's in a good place mentally. He's still staying in touch with his teammates, and hopefully we'll see him soon.
When you talk about, those guys not being here, those guys that are here that's in that role, like DeMar Hamlin, Jamar Johnson, and Josh Thomas, just evaluate those guys' progress in their absence.
Yeah, I think Jaquan, he's the guy who's probably had the most experience when Micah or Jordan haven't played, and that kind of shows in some of the things that he's doing. He's playing with a lot of confidence in these OTAs. He was really good in phase one and phase two with taking charge and leading. You would kind of expect that because of where he is in his career. Whereas DeMar is kind of like still developing, still finding his way, but he's growing. One of the benefits of our starting safeties not being here, he gets a lot of reps. So DeMar's growing in that way. One of the new guys, Nick McLeod, he's in there. He's getting some reps as well. Watching him develop and grow. Josh, he's been on the practice squad, and that's a lot different than actually being out there working with the top defense. So it's good to see him interacting, communicating, getting some snaps he wouldn't ordinarily get. And so we'll just see how he continues to progress as well. But I think the fact that our starters aren't here is really benefiting those young guys.
Leslie, you mentioned texting with Jordan. You have a lot of these guys, you have relationships going back a good 4 or 5 years. Obviously, with the way the season ended last year, what has the last few months been like for a defense that, was number one last year to have it end the way that it did?
Yeah.
What's that been like? What are those conversations been like?
I think for all the guys in our end of the season meeting, we didn't want to forget a lot of the good things we did on defense, and just tried to encourage the guys as much as I could, and the rest of our staff as they went their we all went our separate ways. And it's just good to be back now, getting ready for another season. You have no idea, from season to season what it's going to be like, but the enthusiasm and the excitement that the guys have gives you hope. But everybody's like, moving forward, looking forward, and that's where you want to be in our league.
Coach Brandon touched on this earlier, just with respect to Poyer. His strength is press. At least that was what we had all heard when you guys drafted him. We can't do that right now. So how has he handled not being able to lean on something he's comfortable with through these first few weeks?
Yeah, what I've explained to him, Chris, because that's one of the reasons we were excited about him, because of his press ability. This is a chance to grow his game a little bit. These OTAs where the rules are a little bit different, so he gets a chance to learn how to play more off, which he didn't do a lot of at Florida, and be able to grow in that area. So we're seeing it as a positive, because there are going to be some times in our system where he's not always lined up at the line of scrimmage. You've got to be able to play some off coverage. So this is a chance for him to develop in that area.
So what is the key for him there? Is it getting his feet right, like sharpened up, I guess, for lack of a better term?
Yeah.
It's about feet now, isn't it?
That, along with, where are my eyes? Am I playing my leverage? Where's my help at? All of that is kind of intertwined. So it can be a real positive for what we're trying to get accomplished. Because as I mentioned, there are going to be times where he's going to be able to need to play off coverage, and this time of the year kind of helps him to develop in that area.
Your defensive line has turned over more than any other position group this offseason. I know there are some familiar faces that are back in the fold now, but what is your process in working that blend when it turns over as much as it has this offseason?
Yeah, so much of it for at least this time of the year in OTAs, and even in phase one, phase two, for the lineman is the mental part. You really can't work as hard as you would like on the physical, on the field, other than our individual periods, because the competitive part of it is kind of reduced because you're trying to avoid, the live contact without pads on. So for us, it's about building some camaraderie with our players as coaches, and for them to kind of interact with one another and get to know each other a little bit and develop some trust, but also introducing them to the way we do things. And I think Eric Washington and Marcus West are doing a really good job of laying a foundation fundamentally for the guys that are here, because, as you mentioned, there's been a lot of turnover at the position. So we really had to go back to the drawing board when it came to introducing them to how we do things on defense. And I think the guys have kind of grasped that, and they're growing through the process. But it's a process, and there's a lot more to come, and training camp will be a big part of our progression and how well we end up becoming as the year goes on.
In evaluating the Von Miller decision, just what did you think about his age and his where he is in his career and his longevity?
Which player?
Von Miller.
Yeah. So, really excited about Von being here. We're excited when he signed with us and wanted to be a Buffalo Bill. He shows that he still has flashes to be able to be a premier pass rusher as we watched him in practice, and we saw it on tape at the end of their season when he played, even in the Super Bowl and in their playoff stretch. He really gave him a lot down the stretch. So we think there's still a lot left in the tank. He's a Hall of Fame caliber player for sure, and we're looking forward to him helping our pass rush and helping our defense overall.
How valuable was the experience for Dane Jackson at the end of last year after Tre'Davious got hurt?
I think tremendously valuable. He played a lot of snaps for us and played, very well. Really held his own. The moments never seemed too big for him. One of the best tackling corners, young corners, I think that's in the league. But that experience is kind of showing up this offseason in our OTAs. The confidence that he's playing with, his grasp of the system and understanding what we're trying to get accomplished. And you can see how he's interacting with Poyer and just encouraging him and helping him to grow as we go. And I think that comes back from what he experienced down the stretch with us last season, having to play as much as he did, gaining the confidence that he did to be able to impart some of that information on a young player. So I think it was very valuable.
Knowing that, depth at cornerback, depending on how quickly Trey is ready, Cam Lewis is a guy that's kind of bounced between the practice squad and the active roster for you. What kind of a step have you seen him take this offseason?
Yeah, Cam, we've gotten him in some games kind of sparingly, but when he's played well for us. So we're anxious to see how he plays throughout the offseason as well as training camp. He's had some injuries along the way that have kind of set him back at times, but if he can put a stretch together, we think there's a lot of talent there. He's a smart football player, has coverability, he'll tackle. We just got to keep him on the field. He's been a backup nickel for us. We want to be able to take a look at him at corner as well, but if we can keep him on the field and have him in training camp and throughout the preseason, we'll be able to get a better evaluation going forward.
Leslie, congrats on the Doctor's Seal Award.
Thank you, John. Yes. Yes.
On a top note, going back to that last drive, the last drive of regulation against BC, do you look back at that and see what you could have done differently as a defense, and what do you learn from that, especially now that you have a better pass rush? I mean, Jerry Hughes was that close to getting Mahomes. You winced there. It's like, what do you learn and what in hindsight, what might have you done differently?
Well, you always want to be learning, John. That's the key to progressing in our league and growing. And that's off season is a part of that. Every off season, myself, the coaches, the players, you're trying to grow, you're trying to learn, you're looking back, you're looking forward, and there are definitely some things that we could have done different in that situation. And if we are ever presented with it again, hopefully we'll handle it better. I think we will. But you learn. That's what you have to be able to do. It could be something that could propel us to great things going forward, and you just got to learn from the situation.
Leslie, we haven't seen too much of Ron doing both the left and right side before he got to LA last year. So in your estimation, where do you see him as the most effective?
Yeah, I think it'll be, we've had this discussion, a little bit of what you saw in Los Angeles with him, playing some left and right, because, we see a place for Greg Rousseau, who had a really good rookie season for us, and same thing for A.J. Epinesa, Carlos Basham. We have some things in mind for those guys, and Von has proven that he can be effective at both left and right. And there are certain situations where we definitely want to have him line up in a specific spot and some of it will be based on who we're going against, how we see their offensive line or the strengths and weaknesses of their offensive line. But the flexibility he gives us allows us to really utilize some of our young talent in a positive way. So I don't think we're going to pigeonhole Bond and say you're going to be left or you're going to be right. We're going to use the flexibility that he's displayed to help us be successful.
Along the same lines, Greg was left side only last year, so is that something that's going to shift?
I think it will. I think he'll play some left and he'll play some right as well, but primarily left. But yeah, I mean that's one of the things that Bond gives us, that ability to be able to move people around and find matchups, and that's what we want to be able to take advantage of this season.
Sounds like a lot higher percentages in Denver than you typically, or, whatever, do on your line. I mean, Jerry is 56, 58%. I mean, do you envision, keeping Bond maybe fresher than he has at some other points in his career?
Yeah. That subject was definitely a part of the conversation when we were going through the process prior to signing him, because you're right, his numbers have been way up in comparison to how we rotate defensive linemen. So we talked about that, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, we want him to be fresh in the fourth quarter. He has his way of staying fresh in the fourth quarter to get to the fourth quarter, and we think it meshes with how we want to do things. But we want to continue our rotation system. We think that's important for our players so that we can be at our best in the fourth quarter. So I don't think it's going to be a problem. We want to make sure that he's fresh and ready to go when we get to the fourth quarter ball games.
Leslie, as a coach and a former player, you've been involved in tough losses. So you take us into how you treat that with the players, what happened getting over, what happened in Kansas City, to turn the page as best you can, both from your perspective as their mentor and coach, but also as a former player.
Yeah, one of the things, Sal, that we talked about, as I mentioned earlier, was just bringing them together at the end of the season and just helping them to be able to process the moment, but also explaining to them, as well as our coaches, how you have to be able to learn from this situation and move on. You have to be able to flush it and move on. If you don't, it'll carry over to the next season. As you mentioned, I've been in some tough losses, even in other championship games, and some big wins in championship games. And you have to be able to process that correctly if you win that championship game, to get ready for the next ball game, which is the ball game. Because if you don't, if you just dwell on that game, it can have a negative effect on the next game. And the same thing, if we stay in the past with the last game of our season, it can have a negative effect on our 2022 season. So you got to learn from it, and then you got to move on. You got to be locked in on what can help us to be the best in 2022, and you got to approach it that way. And I think our guys are doing that. I think we've moved on from that, and you got to be looking forward in this league and just learn from wins and learn from losses as well.
Best new player on this defense is on yards so far?
Well, obviously spent a lot of time looking at the number one pick. Always taking a look and seeing how he's progressing and watching him myself and then talking to the coaches. But he definitely sticks out. And I'm, paying attention to Terrell Bernard as well. I mean, he's a guy that we're hoping can give us some depth. If we have an injury, that he can step in and perform at a high level for us. Injuries happen in our league. So those are guys that are really, catching my eye, along with Balen Spector, taking a look at him and just seeing how he's coming along. And we got some other young free agent guys that we're counting on. And, our young defensive ends, you want to see them progress. You want to see Greg take another step. You want to see Carlos take another step, AJ. So there are a number of guys, kind of looking at it. I can't say, Mookie, there's just one guy, other than we need Poyer to step up and play well for us early.
Leslie, you just
Sorry, what sort of conversations have you maybe had with Tremaine as he's entering the final year of his contract? We ask you all the time about enemies of his defensive liking Friday. Is that contract at all been on his mind, and have you tried to ease that in any way?
Yeah, I think in all of our conversations, it's all about just being himself and playing at a high level like he always does, and not focusing on the contract part of it, but just going out and controlling what you can control. And that's the best advice that I can give him. He's been a tremendous player for us. He makes a lot of plays. He leads our defense, and You just have to be able to block out the noise and go out and play the way he's capable of playing, and everything will fall into place. And that's my advice: just control what you can control.
What do you feel is the next step for him to be able to Pro Bowl?
Yeah, I think and he knows this. You want more splash plays. You want those big plays in ball games. That play he made against the Texans, the interception he came up with, that was a huge play in that ball game. It really helped propel us along the way to a really good performance. And more plays like that. And if we get that, that'll help take us to another level as a defense. He's capable. He's shown that. But more splash plays probably.
Leslie, you mentioned Craig and AJ and Boogie a minute ago there in your answer, and Sean a couple of weeks ago was pretty honest about needing those three guys in particular to take the next step in their careers.
Yeah.
It's very early in the process, but what type of a next step do you need to see from them in training camp and preseason, knowing that they're going to be relied on a lot in the regular season?
Yeah, probably the consistency piece, where you kind of know what you're going to get every day. That's important. They're past that point when they were rookies and it was kind of up and down, lulls here, breakout here. We should be past that point. Even with Greg, as much as he played a season ago and as well as he played, just the consistency, we definitely need that from AJ. We need that from Carlos, where we can kind of know what we can expect every time they walk on the field and not be concerned, how's he going to practice today or how's he going to perform in the game on Sunday. We have a real good idea of what we can expect from each one of those guys, and that being a high level of activity and making plays for us on defense. And so the consistency, to answer your question.
Sorry about that. Shaq Lawson and Jordan Phillips are a couple of guys that we're familiar with.
Yes.
Bringing back to the fold. What have you seen from them?
Yeah, really excited to have both of them back. It just warms your heart when guys that left for what they thought were greener pastures come back and say, you know what, this is the best place for me. No matter the money or anything else, this environment, this culture is the best place for me. And so those were two guys who played at a high level for us. They're bringing a lot of juice, a lot of energy to our practices, to our meetings, because they are excited about being here. And I look forward to them, to the both of them, really helping our team this next season. They're good players and they're good people as well.
Jordan has a good year next to Ed Oliver. How excited are you to kind of see those guys up front?
Yeah, I've referenced that a few different times, how those guys played alongside each other, and to be able to see them united again, it should help Ed's game. Ed played tremendously for us a year ago. But then being able to get a guy like Daquan Jones as well. Having him in there lined up with Ed along with Jordan, I think it bodes well for what we're trying to do up front. But it should be good for us having Jordan, having Shaq on the edge, setting the point for us, and really giving us a stabilizing force when it comes to the run game. So we're excited about both of them being back.
You mentioned
Last one.
all of those young pass rushers kind of take that next step forward and what you discussed with them in general, but AJ's going into his third season. Is there anything in particular that, you need to see from him and that you want him to do differently than he's done in years past?
Yeah, I think it still goes back for him also with the confidence. You remember the game he had against the Dolphins. We all expected that to be his breakout game. It was a tremendous effort. But then the next week, that was a lull. So we want to get past that. We want to see that AJ that we saw in that Miami game on a consistent basis. And because when you put a game like that on tape, then everybody knows you're capable of doing it. And now we want to see that on a consistent basis. And he knows that. We've talked about that. And just bringing his game to that level where we can trust him and know what we're going to get from week to week. And he's more than capable. He just has to see himself that way and play with that type of confidence week in and week out. All right, thank you. You're welcome.